It was a bright, unforgiving morning in Austin, Texas. The kind of day where the sun shines just a little too brightly, casting long shadows that seem to mock your every move. Mia sat at her desk, her fingers frozen above the keyboard. Her phone buzzed on the edge of the table, its sudden vibration cutting through the thick silence of the room. The message that appeared on the screen was simple. It was from her Uncle Jason. "You need to see this, Mia." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The dread sank into her stomach like a stone, heavy and unshakable. She had no idea what was coming, but she felt the air around her grow thick with tension. She clicked the video, her heartbeat racing in sync with the loading circle that spun endlessly on the screen. Then it was there, her family, in the kitchen of the house she'd been quietly helping to support for the past 4 years. Her mother, her brother Sam, and her father, sitting around the table like they always did, only this time, their words cut deeper than any knife could. "She's only helping because she owes us," her mother's voice oozed with contempt, each syllable sharp enough to draw blood. "After all we've done for her, paying the mortgage is the least she can do." Her brother's laugh was nothing more than a sneer. "Yeah, she thinks she's doing us a huge favor." What a joke. But the worst part wasn't the words themselves. It was the silence that followed them, the silent agreement from her father. The man who had once been her hero, who had taught her how to ride a bike, who had sat beside her while she struggled with algebra homework. Now, he just sat there, nodding along, allowing the venom to spill out. Mia's hands trembled as she clutched the phone, her mind racing. 4 years. 4 years of quietly paying their mortgage through her company, Acorn Investments, while they had no clue. She had set up everything under an LLC, so they would never have to know. She had wanted to protect them from the embarrassment of relying on her, from the humiliation of admitting they needed help. But here they were, mocking her, turning her into the villain in their own twisted narrative. She rewatched the video again, each word, each laugh, cutting deeper than the last. It felt like a slap in the face, every second of it a betrayal. For the past 4 years, Mia had been their financial lifeline, their safety net, their unseen provider. And this was how they repaid her. As the video ended, a text from Uncle Jason flashed on the screen. "I'm sorry you had to see that. But you need to know the truth." Mia's breath caught in her throat. Her heart was pounding, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. She had always been there for them, helping when they needed it most, sacrificing her time, her energy, her hard-earned money. And this was the thanks she got? Her fingers hovered over the screen, her mind already made up. She would no longer be their puppet. The next payment was due in 2 weeks, but this time, she wouldn't be the one to cover it. She wouldn't save them from the consequences of their own arrogance. Let them face the harsh reality they had so casually ignored. A dark smile tugged at the corners of Mia's lips as she typed a message to her uncle. "Thanks for showing me the truth. Don't worry, I won't tell them you sent this. But things are about to change." And just like that, the decision was made. Mia was done playing the part of the dutiful daughter, the invisible helper. It was time for her family to see exactly what it felt like to stand on their own. The days that followed dragged by in an agonizing slow burn. Mia's heart was a constant battleground between rage and resolve. The video kept replaying in her mind, haunting her every moment. She would be lying if she said it didn't sting when her brother, the golden boy of the family, Sam, smirked at the idea of her doing them a favor. The words echoed in her ears, each syllable a sharp reminder of just how little they thought of her. The constant drip of disdain she had endured for years was suddenly a flood, drowning any remnants of loyalty she had left for them. But Mia wasn't a woman who cried over spilled milk. No, she was a woman who dealt with things, calculated the next move, and made sure it was the one that would leave a mark. She couldn't undo what had already been said, but she could certainly change what was going to happen next. She began her quiet preparations. The next mortgage payment was due in less than 2 weeks, and for the first time in years, Mia wasn't about to cover it. She didn't need to think twice. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She dialed her financial advisor, Kate, a woman who had helped her navigate these waters years ago when she'd first bailed her family out of their financial mess. Kate answered on the second ring, her voice calm as always. Kate, I need to know everything about that purchase option in the contract, Mia said, her voice steady but cold. Kate's response was immediate. I figured you might, Mia. You're asking about the clause that lets you take ownership of the house if they miss a payment, right? Yeah, Mia replied, her fingers tapping rhythmically on her desk. I need to know exactly how it works, and what I can do if they miss it. Kate paused for a moment, probably running through the paperwork in her head. If they miss a payment, Divine Investments can exercise the purchase option. The house becomes yours outright, and they're legally required to become tenants. It's all written out in the agreement. You've got the upper hand here, Mia. Mia's lips curled into a bitter smile. Good. Let's make sure everything is in place. I want them to feel the consequences of their actions. It was time. Mia logged into her LLC's account and pulled up the mortgage details. She reviewed every payment she'd made, more than $250,000 over the past 4 years, while they had contributed a fraction of the total. The numbers didn't lie. They thought they were dealing with a faceless bank, but Mia was the one keeping them afloat. And now, it was time for them to learn just who had been carrying them all this time. But Mia wasn't going to make it obvious. No, she needed them to feel the shock when the truth finally hit them. They had spent years mocking her, undermining her success, and acting like she owed them something for simply existing. They were about to learn a very painful lesson. The day before the payment was due, Mia received a message from her mother. Her fingers hovered over the screen, a cruel smile tugging at her lips. Sweetie, can you come over for dinner? We need to talk about something important. Mia stared at the message for a long moment, the irony of it thick in the air. They need to talk? She was about to give them the most important lesson of their lives, and they had no idea what was coming. Dinner that night was everything she had expected it to be, and nothing like she imagined it would feel. She walked into the house, her eyes scanning the familiar surroundings, the same ones she had helped to preserve. The kitchen smelled of her mother's lasagna, a meal that had always been a symbol of comfort, of family, of everything that Mia had thought she was working towards. But now, it felt like a trap. Her mother greeted her with the same false warmth, her new designer bracelet glinting in the light. Mia couldn't help but notice how it contrasted with the dingy, faded kitchen countertops. How's work, sweetheart? Her mother asked, her voice sweet but laced with an undertone of something more insidious. Mia didn't need to look at her mother to know what was coming. She could already hear the scripted pitch in her head. It's fine, Mia replied, maintaining her cool. Busy, but good. Her brother Sam, dressed in his usual pressed shirt, was sitting at the table, his smirk just as insufferable as it always was. Glad you could join us, Mia. We all know how important your job is. Unlike the rest of us, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Mia kept her face neutral, but inside, the simmering fury was almost unbearable. If only he knew how much of his so-called business sense depended on her generosity, how much of this dinner, this conversation, everything he had was a direct result of the money she had secretly been pouring into their lives. Her father walked in soon after, his glasses perched on the edge of his nose as he shuffled some papers around. He wasn't fooling anyone. Mia had seen him prepare for this moment, the rehearsed way he would try to soften the blow. This dinner wasn't about family, or even about what Mia had done for them, it was about manipulating her into helping them more. Before they even began eating, her mother placed her hands on the table, her voice steady. Mia, we've been talking. You know, with the way things are going, we've been struggling with the mortgage. The payment's gotten a little too much for us to handle. Mia raised an eyebrow, her gaze cold. I'm sure you've been struggling, she said, her voice clipped, but I've been helping, haven't I? Sam leaned forward, his smug expression only deepening. Not enough, Mia. You've got all that tech money, but here we are, trying to keep the family business afloat. We thought maybe you could help more. Just an extra couple thousand a month wouldn't hurt, would it? Mia's pulse quickened, her blood boiling beneath the surface. They didn't even know. They had no clue that she had been paying more than $5,000 a month to cover the difference, while they were under the delusion that they were paying off their mortgage just fine. "I'll think about it," Mia said, her voice controlled, masking the storm of emotions inside her. She looked at her mother, then at Sam. The audacity. The nerve. They had no idea what was coming. Dinner was a performance. The emotional blackmail, the subtle guilt-tripping, all of it played out just as Mia had anticipated. But what they didn't know was that Mia wasn't going to play along anymore. She excused herself to the bathroom, but instead of using it, she quietly slipped past her father's study. Her ears picked up their voices. Sam's angry tone. "She's not going to help, She doesn't give a damn about this family." Her mother's voice, softer but no less venomous. "She never did. She's too busy with her career to care about what really matters." The words cut into her like shards of glass, but Mia stayed calm, even as the fury inside her raged. They thought they had control. They thought they were pulling the strings. But Mia had been holding the cards all along, and now, they were about to find out. When she returned to the table, her smile was cold, a mask of politeness hiding the storm beneath. "I'll give you an answer soon," she said, her voice sweet. "But I think I've already made up my mind." The game was on. Mia's plan was already in motion. They had no idea what was about to happen. The days following that dinner were the hardest Mia had ever endured. Her family had no idea what was coming, and the thought of their complete ignorance gnawed at her every moment. They continued to send her messages, sweet, pleading ones, pressuring her to help out more with the mortgage. Each message, every phone call, only cemented her resolve. They were so used to manipulating her, to acting as if they had some inherent right to her resources. But Mia wasn't playing their game anymore. This was no longer about being the good daughter. This was about showing them the consequences of their actions. By the time the deadline for the mortgage payment arrived, Mia was ready. She had already arranged everything. Kate, her financial advisor, had double-checked the paperwork. The clause that allowed her to purchase the house from the LLC if the payments were missed was airtight. Mia had made sure of that. But more than just the legalities, she had made herself emotionally prepared. She was no longer the soft, dutiful daughter. She was someone else now, a woman who had been pushed to the brink and was finally ready to take control. The morning the payment was due, Mia woke up with an eerie calmness. Her phone was filled with messages from her family, all of them begging her to reconsider. The tone of her mother's messages was now laced with desperation. "Mia, please, we don't know what to do. You're the only one who can help us right now." Her father's voice on the phone had that same tone of authority, the one he used to employ when he wanted to make Mia feel guilty, small. "Mia, this is your family we're talking about. You can't just walk away from us like this." It was almost laughable, how little they understood. She had been carrying them all these years, paying their mortgage, taking on their burdens while they treated her like a stranger, like an ATM. They had no idea what she was truly doing behind the scenes, and now, they were going to find out the hard way. At exactly 9 a.m., she pulled the trigger. The automated system of Divine Investments sent out the default notice. Her heart didn't race. There was no exhilaration in her chest. Just calm. Cold. Calculated. The email she sent them wasn't cruel, but it was final. Due to non-payment, Divine Investments LLC is exercising its purchase option for the property at address. The house is now legally owned by the LLC and will be treated as a rental property. Please refer to the attached documentation regarding tenancy and payment arrangements moving forward. She didn't wait for the calls, the protests, the panic to come. She knew what was coming next. They would try everything they could to make her feel guilty, to force her hand. They would act like victims, desperate for sympathy, but Mia wasn't falling for it. They had made their choice when they decided to disrespect her and belittle her sacrifices. Now, they would pay for it. The phone call came less than 10 minutes later. Her mother's voice was frantic. Mia, something's wrong with the mortgage. The bank's saying we defaulted. We don't understand, this can't be happening. Mia's voice was smooth, steady. Actually, Mom, the mortgage isn't with the bank anymore. It's with my company. Divine Investments isn't a bank, it's an LLC. And since the payment was missed, we've exercised our right to purchase the property. She paused, letting the silence stretch between them, savoring the moment. The house is now mine. You're no longer the owners. You're tenants. The line was silent for a long, excruciating moment. She could practically hear her mother's world shattering. What are you saying? Her mother stammered. I'm saying, Mia replied slowly, that the house you've been living in for the past few years, the house you thought was still under your name, is now officially mine. I've been covering most of the payments all this time. You were never paying the full mortgage. You were just sending a small portion while I took care of the rest. But now, your status has changed. You're tenants. You'll be receiving a new lease agreement soon. Her mother's voice broke with a sound of disbelief. Mia, please, this isn't funny. This is our home. You can't do this to us. I'm not joking, Mia said, the edge to her voice sharp now. You've made it clear over the years that I was just a burden to you. So, I'm just returning the favor. And by the way, you'll be receiving an eviction notice if rent isn't paid on time. There was a long pause. Mia could hear her mother trying to hold back tears, her breath shaking. Mia, don't do this. We're family. Please. Family, Mia repeated, her voice colder now, isn't about taking and never giving anything back. You've shown me what family means to you, and now I'm showing you what family means to me. Before her mother could respond, Mia ended the call. She didn't need to hear the pleading, the guilt trips, or the desperate apologies that were sure to come next. It was too late. The moment she had been waiting for had finally arrived. Mia had taken back control. As she sat in her living room, staring at the quiet, still house, she felt nothing but a strange sense of liberation. The weight that had been pressing on her for so many years was finally gone. They would have to face the consequences of their actions now. No more pretending. No more manipulation. She wasn't their puppet anymore. But this wasn't over yet. She still had to deal with her brother. Sam. The real player behind all of this. He was going to have his own response, and Mia was ready for it. She knew exactly how he would act, demanding, entitled, and completely unwilling to accept that things were changing. He'd be the next one to try and break her. But Mia was already steps ahead. She had prepared for this. And when Sam came knocking, demanding his share of the family business he thought he was entitled to, Mia would be waiting. This game of theirs was far from over. And Mia was determined to win. The hours following the phone call were tense, but Mia remained unfazed. Her family was in complete disarray, their world unraveling as they tried to grasp what had just happened. She could practically hear the chaos in her mother's voice, the frantic pacing, the pleading for help that was now futile. But Mia wasn't going to play the role of the dutiful daughter anymore. Her heart no longer ached for their desperate cries. She had made her decision, and there was no going back. Her phone buzzed with another incoming call. Mia didn't need to look at the screen. She already knew it was her father. His name flashed in bold letters, and for a moment, Mia considered letting it ring through to voicemail. But she picked up anyway, her voice calm, detached. Mia, this is your father, came the familiar, authoritative tone, but there was something unsteady beneath it, something she had never heard before. What the hell is going on? Your mother says we've been locked out of our house, what are you doing? We've helped you your entire life, and now you're doing this? Mia's grip tightened on the phone, her fingers steady as her pulse remained calm. You're right, Dad. You did help me, she said, her voice smooth and measured. And that's why I've been helping you all these years, covering your mortgage, paying your bills, while you've been sitting back, acting like I'm your ATM. You've had your chance. Now, it's my turn. Her father's silence was deafening, his confusion thick in the air. What the hell are you talking about? You didn't read the fine print, Dad. I've been the one paying the bulk of the mortgage for years, while you thought it was all handled by some faceless bank. You never knew, because I made sure to keep it that way. But you and Mom and Sam, you all thought I owed you more. Thought I was nothing but an easy target for your guilt trips. Her father's voice broke, and Mia could hear the frustration building. You're our daughter, Mia. Your family. How could you do this? Mia's voice didn't waver. I'm doing this because I've been your family for far too long. And I'm done being taken for granted. You all thought you could walk all over me, that I'd always be there to clean up your mess, and now it's time for you to see the consequences. The house is mine. I'm your landlord now. You're not the owners anymore. You'll be receiving a new lease agreement soon, and if the rent isn't paid, I'm starting the eviction process. She could hear him take a deep breath, his next words laced with venom, but Mia was beyond caring. You've crossed a line, Mia. You're turning into something cold and heartless. What kind of daughter does this to her family? Mia swallowed the bitterness rising in her throat. The kind of daughter who has been used for years. The kind of daughter who is finally standing up for herself, after all the years of being belittled, disrespected, and drained dry. I'm done being that person. With that, she ended the call. She didn't need to hear any more of his disappointment, his weak attempts to manipulate her. The time for apologies had passed. Her family was about to feel the full weight of their ingratitude. Minutes later, her phone buzzed again. It was Sam. Mia didn't hesitate before picking up. Well, if it isn't the golden child herself, Sam's voice dripped with mockery. You think you've got it all figured out, don't you? You think you're clever, that you've pulled one over on the family. Mia's lips tightened into a thin smile. I know what you're trying to do, Sam. You're trying to guilt me, trying to manipulate me just like Mom and Dad. But it's not going to work. You really think I'm just going to sit here and let you ruin everything? Sam snapped, his voice rising. You don't even understand how hard it is to run this family business. I've been holding it together while you've been off in your little tech world, acting like you're too good for us. But without me, this family would have nothing. Mia clenched her jaw. That's where you're wrong, Sam. You had nothing because you couldn't manage it. You nearly ran the family business into the ground, and now you're blaming me? Don't kid yourself. You wouldn't have even had the chance to run anything if it weren't for me, cleaning up the mess and keeping things afloat while you pretended to be the hero. He was silent for a moment, the shock evident in the way his voice faltered. You think I don't know how much you've been paying? You think I don't know that you've been secretly covering the mortgage? You've been hiding money, Mia, pretending to be some martyr while we struggled. Mia's voice was sharp, like a blade cutting through the air. That's the difference between you and me, Sam. I was doing it because I cared. Because I thought I was helping. But now, I see you for what you really are, a parasite. And I'm not going to let you keep sucking the life out of me. I'm done. You can't just take everything away like this, Sam spat. You can't just walk in and take control. You'll regret this, Mia. I'm going to make sure of it. Mia didn't flinch at his threats. Go ahead, Sam. Do your worst. But know this, I'm not the same person you used to bully, the one you could walk all over. I'm done being the quiet, invisible one. You want to threaten me? Fine. But be prepared to face the consequences of your own actions. She ended the call, before he could respond, the weight of the situation pressing down on her chest. She knew this wasn't the last of it. Sam would try everything in his power to turn the tide, to manipulate her again. But Mia had learned her lesson. No one was going to take advantage of her anymore. And when the eviction notices started going out, when they realized just how badly they had underestimated her, Mia knew they would understand what it meant to truly face the consequences of their own actions. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the woman she had finally become. A woman who would no longer be silenced, no longer be the one who cleaned up everyone else's mess. The real game was only just beginning. The days that followed were a blur of messages, threats, and increasingly desperate attempts from her family to break her resolve. Mia had anticipated their pushback, but nothing could have prepared her for the intensity of their reactions. The first eviction notice had barely been served when her phone began to explode with texts. Her mother's voice, once calm and reassuring, was now trembling with panic. "Mia, please, don't do this. We're family. What will we do without the house? You can't just take everything away from us." Her father's messages were a mixture of guilt and anger. "This is your family we're talking about. You're going to destroy us. What happened to your kindness? And Sam?" Sam was a constant barrage of threats, trying to twist every conversation into an attack on her. "I will make sure your company gets investigated, Mia. You'll lose everything if you keep this up." He'd even gone so far as to contact a few of her business associates, trying to stir up trouble. But Mia was ready. She had already forwarded all their correspondence to her attorney and had her lawyer on standby. She was no longer intimidated by their empty threats. But even as Mia steadied herself against the storm of their attacks, a strange sense of calm settled over her. She had been their safety net for so long, but now the roles had reversed. They were the ones who would have to fight for what they had left, and for the first time in her life, Mia didn't feel guilty. She didn't feel anything but clarity. The day came when her family was forced to vacate the house. Mia had given them ample time, and now the eviction process was final. She could see the fear in her mother's eyes when they showed up at the house to collect their things. Sam had tried to put on a brave face, but it was obvious that the weight of the situation was starting to hit him too. They had nowhere else to go. Mia didn't watch them pack. She didn't need to. Instead, she took a quiet walk outside, staring at the house from the driveway, as the wind brushed through the trees. It was her house now, legally, emotionally, and symbolically. She had given them everything, and now she had finally taken back what was rightfully hers. Her family had shown her who they were, and she had no more illusions about them. A few weeks later, Mia received a call from her lawyer. "They've signed the last of the paperwork," he said, his voice steady. "It's officially over. You're in control now. They're gone for good." The relief that washed over her was undeniable, but there was no sense of triumph, no gloating. It wasn't about winning for Mia, it was about reclaiming control over her life. It was about proving to herself that she was stronger than the people who had tried to diminish her for so long. Still, the fallout continued. Mia had expected the backlash from extended family and friends who didn't understand her decision. They all called her heartless, even cruel. But Mia didn't regret it. For the first time in years, she wasn't answering to anyone but herself. And as for the few who reached out to her in anger, her Uncle Jason had been right. Mia had been too good to them. The best thing she could do now was cut ties and move forward. The sale of the house went through, and Mia used the proceeds to set up a foundation, a charitable organization focused on helping victims of financial abuse. It was something she had always dreamed of doing, but had never felt strong enough to pursue. Now, with a sense of purpose and freedom, she knew she was ready to build something meaningful. She would help others who had been taken advantage of the way she had, but this time, it would be on her terms. 3 months later, Mia stood in front of her new office, a sleek, modern building that she had just moved into, one that represented the future she was creating for herself. Her old life had been left behind, and she could finally breathe. She thought about her family, how they would never truly understand her decision, how they would likely continue to play the victim for years to come. But that wasn't her problem anymore. They had chosen their path, and now she was choosing hers. As she looked out the window, the city stretching out beneath her, Mia smiled to herself. For the first time in years, she felt free, free from the guilt, free from the manipulation, free from the shadows of a family that had never truly seen her for who she was. She had learned that sometimes, the best revenge wasn't about making people pay, it was about making them see. Mia had made sure her family saw her. She had made sure they understood just what it meant to treat someone as if they were nothing. And now, she would move forward, her future unwritten, her path clear. Her life was hers again. And no one would ever take that away from her.